Chapter 3. Why we practice tragedy before it happens. Most people think anxiety looks dramatic, like panic, like fear. It usually doesn't. Most anxiety wears a very convincing disguise. It looks responsible, prepared, thoughtful, the kind of person other people rely on. The truth is that some of the most anxious people you'll ever meet don't look anxious at all. They look successful, dependable, organized. They look like they've got everything under control. Which brings us to David. Let's get to know him and see if we start to see some of ourselves in his story. David coaches Little League, remembers everyone's birthday, sends the thank you text before you even get home. By every available metric, David is absolutely crushing it at being a person. He is also, as of 6 minutes ago, parked in his own driveway with the engine off. His wife doesn't know he's home. His kids don't know he's home. His dog suspects something. Dogs always know. David is on his third dog video. Before that, a different dog. Before that, a song that ended 2 songs ago. He told himself he just needed a minute. He is on minute 6. Here's what nobody says out loud. David doesn't hate his family. He is not having a crisis. He does not need therapy. Well, maybe, but not for this. David loves his family so completely that walking through that door requires a version of himself he hasn't quite assembled yet. And the car, the dark, the engine off, the dog video, that's where he puts himself back together. 90 seconds of being nobody's anything before he goes in and becomes everybody's everything. This chapter is about people like David. He shows up every night. He just needs a minute first. Technically 6. But who's counting? Here's what's actually happening in that driveway. We talk about distraction like it's something that happens to us, but a lot of the time, it's something we do on purpose, without admitting it. A small, managed exit. Because the alternative, being all the way here with these people, in this body that is quietly getting older, on an evening that will not come again, is more than the system wants to hold. Which sounds dramatic. Until you notice how quickly your hand finds the phone when a moment gets awkward. The phone isn't the enemy of the moment. The phone is the escape hatch the moment makes us reach for. We don't check out because we're weak or careless. We check out because being fully where we are has become, somewhere along the line, almost unbearable. The screen offers a way to be technically present and actually gone. You have a version of this. Maybe it's sitting in the driveway. Maybe it's the extra 2 minutes in the bathroom at the party, scrolling nothing just to escape. It isn't that you don't want to be there. It's that being there, all the way, asks something of you that you don't always have left. And for what it's worth, knowing this doesn't fix it. You can understand the escape hatch completely and still find your hand on the phone. A few weeks later, David told me about a night at dinner. His daughter was telling him something, a thing that happened at school, something about a friend, a misunderstanding, the kind of thing that is the entire world when you are 9 years old. She had her hands going as she talked, the way kids do when the story is too big to just say with words, and he couldn't help but notice that he reached for his phone. He didn't decide to reach for it. That's the part that's hard to explain to anyone, including yourself. The hand just went, the way it goes 100 times a day, and now the screen is lit, and his thumb is moving, and he is reading something that does not matter at all. While a person he would die for finishes a sentence he will not be able to repeat. And here's the worst of it. He could see himself doing it. And he keeps scrolling anyway. Here's what that moment actually looks like from the lens of neuroscience. David wasn't thinking about his phone. He was thinking about her. The tilt of her head when the story got to the important part, the way her voice sped up when she was excited, her hands still going. All of it landing on him at once. Too fast, too full, too much. I've sat across from my own kid in a perfectly ordinary evening. Nothing wrong, nowhere to be. and felt something so large I didn't know what to do with it. It wasn't joy, exactly. It was something closer to terror. The terror of loving something this much, of knowing how fast it goes, of knowing, somewhere in the back of everything, that this version, hands going, voice speeding up, the whole breathless seriousness of being a kid, is happening once. Only once. Which the brain, very helpfully, files under things not to think about, right next to the retirement fund and calling the dentist. And I checked the phone. Not because I wanted to be somewhere else, because I wanted to be there so much that the wanting itself became unbearable. David loves his daughter too much to be in the room with her. And the phone is the only escape he's found from that particular kind of love. And that's where the whole thing begins to fall apart. Which brings us back to Daniel and what he found at the kitchen sink. Daniel told me about the first time he found himself fully inside an ordinary moment after his wife died. His very next move was to ruin it. He was at the sink, washing a glass, and without deciding to, he was simply there, in the kitchen. It lasted about 4 seconds, and then he couldn't stand it, because to be there was to feel that she was not, and the not was enormous. So he did what he always did. He turned on a podcast, loud, mid-sentence, let a stranger's voice fill the kitchen so there'd be no room left in it for him. He told me, I couldn't get away from the sink fast enough. I'd been wanting to feel something for months, and the second I did, I ran. Which is, for the record, one of the most honest things anyone has ever said about grief. Most people would have said they just needed some air. This is the part the gentle version of presence never tells you. Coming home to yourself is not a relief when home is where the grief lives. The flight into the noise, the scroll, the next task, it isn't a character flaw. It's the body doing exactly what it's always done, getting you out of a room that's become too full. Daniel wanted to feel her and couldn't bear to feel her. And both of those were love. So here's where it turned. Listen closely. And I'm not going to lie to you about how it goes. What changed for Daniel was not that he stopped fleeing. He still flees. He told me so. What changed is that he stopped treating the fleeing as proof that something was wrong with him. He'd notice the podcast come on and understand it as information. Oh, the room got too full. I needed out. Instead of one more entry in the long ledger of his failures. He kept a very thorough ledger, detailed, cross-referenced, the way only truly dedicated self-critics bother. And on a good day, sometimes, he could turn the podcast back off. Not always. But sometimes he could come back to the sink, knowing exactly what the sink contained, and stay for 5 seconds this time, instead of 4. He said that didn't feel like healing. It didn't feel like progress, or recovery, or any of the words people use. It felt like learning to be in the same room as his own life, for slightly longer than he could the day before. Which is not the self-help version of this story. But it is the true one. So let me say the thing this whole chapter has been walking toward. You'll put the phone down and pick it up and hate yourself and put it down again. You'll get 4 seconds at the sink and bolt for the noise. None of that is the failure that comes before the real thing. That is the real thing. It is what presence actually looks like in a person who has lived long enough to have something to lose. And every so often, in the middle of all that division, there's a gap in the static. A few unguarded seconds where you are simply at the table, or in the car with the window down. Not because you achieved it, but because for one unearned instant, the alarm went quiet, and you were allowed to be in your own life. You can't make those moments come. You can only make yourself slightly less likely to flee them when they do. That is the entire art. It is considerably smaller than "seize the day," which, as a rallying cry, has always asked a lot, and far harder. And it is the only version that has ever actually been available to anyone. So before we go on, do me a favor. Tonight, when your hand finds the phone, and it will, don't make it a battle. Just notice. Oh, the room got full. I need it out. And then, if you can, come back. Not forever, just 4 seconds. Maybe 5. Because one day, and I have no idea which day, the child will finish that sentence for the last time. Just one ordinary Tuesday disguised as every other Tuesday. You won't know it when it happens. That's the part people always get wrong. We imagine life gives us notice, a countdown, a final boarding call. It doesn't. One day you'll pick them up and put them down and never pick them up again. One day you'll hear a laugh that has always been there and then realize months have passed since you've heard it. One day someone you love will say something completely forgettable, and years later you'll give anything to hear it one more time. Not because it was important, because they were. The tragedy is how often we don't stay present in the moment. You don't have to seize the day. That sounds exhausting. Just don't abandon it quite so early. Stay for the laugh. Stay long enough to remember you were here when it happened. Because there is always a day before. And someday, for something you love, today might be that day.